What's up, guys? Have you ever dreamed of moving into Denver? Maybe you're just searching things on the web and you came across this video about the cost of living in Denver. We're going to talk to you about what the actual dream of moving to Denver or living in Denver will actually cost you. And if you're a native to Denver, it's always good to check in on those prices. So stay tuned. I'm going to dive into, all things cost of living in Denver and Colorado next. What's up, guys? Jeremy Kane, eXp Realty and Living in the Denver Suburbs YouTube channel. Thank you so much for tuning in. This is maybe something that you've heard on my channel mixed throughout my videos, but today we're going to dive into the actual cost of living right now, 2023 in Denver, Colorado. And as we kind of look at this, we'll start with housing, we'll go all the way down the line. But while you're here on YouTube, please like, comment, give me a subscribe, hit that notification bell, and you'll be notified when I post one video a week all about Denver and the real estate market. I am a real estate agent, so if you need any of that, send me a text, DM on all the channels. But I didn't just Google a bunch of numbers and come here to bring this information to you. I want to tell you what it's like boots on the ground, and we'll dive in. So let's go. Okay, so let's get into it. We'll start with housing. Obviously, that's my forte. The average cost of a home in Denver, September 2023, hot off the presses, $764,126. That's the main MLS in the 11 counties that it's pulled from. The average is a little bit skewed due to some higher priced properties that may have snuck in the MLS from outside, maybe the resort towns, but also some of the higher priced areas with luxury homes and things like that. They really bring that price and that value up. I will tell you, there was like 2 homes that sold under $200,000 in Denver last month. So there's not a ton there as far as affordability goes. But the median, which is a little bit more indicative of what our market's like, $637,500 coming in September 2023. And so, as you know, that's a high priced home. And if we're talking about, just graduated college, have a pretty decent job, maybe making $80,000 to $100,000 a year, which don't get mad at me, college grads, I know that's not, completely the norm, but let's say it is, when you're looking at, putting minimal down, 3.5% down, maybe down payment assistance, and you're looking at a payment probably north of $5,000 if you're going for a $600,000 home. So there are cheaper areas. There are places where you can go to absolutely, within the metro, within 15, 30 minutes of downtown, or maybe even some smaller units downtown that you can get into. But regardless, we're talking about the median and overall. I will tell you that per Rent Cafe, right before this, the average rent is $2,000 for a 2-bed, 1-bath, 840 square foot apartment. I will tell you that's probably, it is what it is. It's the average. I haven't seen much below $1,500 in a minute here in the metro area. Obviously, if you go smaller, you're doing a room rent or something like that, maybe you can make it happen. But that's a pretty lofty, price point, but obviously not your $4,000 or $5,000 mortgage payment that you might be walking into with a low down payment to get into the Denver market. And hopefully your job and, all the stuff that Denver has going on will help support that. And our wages are rising. I saw, 5.3%. Wage increase year over year and all the things, but it still doesn't make that, $4,000 or $5,000 house payment, super easy to swallow. But we all know that homeownership is definitely the way to go. A lot of house hacking opportunities, a lot of roommate situations that can help. If you are in a position to qualify for a mortgage that high, you can definitely, do some things to help. Obviously, living with a significant other or spouse or buddies or whatever that may be, to share the cost while you're still in home ownership is absolutely, an amazing option. So that's kind of that. It's a little spicy. I get it, right? Those are big numbers coming at you. Especially if you're not that fortunate college grad that got the perfect job or, the good high level entry position. But it is kind of what it is in the Denver metro area. And we're still not as expensive as some of the other, major metro districts, obviously New York, Chicago, some parts of California. And that's really where the apartments and the rents and, people are lifetime renters in some cases in those cities. If they're doing some of the stuff that's not, bringing them as much coin as they would like to see, so they could purchase a home. But we're definitely moving up in the lack of affordability chart here in Denver. Next, let's talk about transportation. Obviously, the light rail expansion over the last 20 to 25 years is basically giving you a spider web out of central Denver, from the airport to Lakewood to, Thornton, down to, Centennial and the Tech Center area, all the way out to Aurora. And so it kind of is taking that central thing and put some wings on it. Obviously, to get from the light rail station or the light rail stop to your house, it may be a walk, it may be a bike. If you are relying solely on public transportation, 30, 40, 50 bucks for bus passes, depending on your age and your situation. But definitely not the best mode of transportation, especially in the winter, when, sometimes waiting for that bus or waiting for that train is a little bit chilly on days that get a little bit low. So that's kind of the transportation piece. I will tell you, Ubers and Lyfts seem to have skyrocketed in price here, and cabs and things like that. I live in Littleton, so I'm about 20, 30 minutes away from downtown. It's 35, 40 bucks on a good day to get into the central portion of Denver for those rideshare programs. So definitely something to, take into account is the transportation, but always outweighs gas prices. About $4.50 a gallon right now. I was in Vegas, it's about $5.10. Talking to the Uber driver, he said California was $7. So I don't know if any of those numbers are true, because they're definitely taken from an Uber ride that I got in Vegas. But that kind of gives you a general idea of where Denver fuel prices kind of fall in the grand scheme of things. Next thing, we're going to talk about groceries. I have a family of 5. One of my baby doesn't eat a lot of groceries. So we generally are about $200, $250 a week. Pre-pandemic, we were probably $125 to $150 a week. So cost of everything's gone up. Depends on what day it is, how much your eggs cost, and that kind of stuff. We also go outside the norm a little bit and probably spend a little bit more on some of the meats and things that we get, grass-fed and all of that. So there's definitely ways to save here, but the cost of groceries are going up. I can't go and get a couple things to finish a dinner without spending, I feel like, $50 at the grocery store. And so that's something to consider. Thinking about going out. On average for our family with no alcohol, we probably spend about 80 bucks, between my wife and my 2 kids. And if we're going to a little bit, and that's a basic, neighborhood restaurant at Chili's and Applebee's, Buffalo Wild Wings, any Mexican restaurant, as Colorado green chili, absolutely the bomb. So then, as you scale it up, and, I would say for a decent restaurant on, for a couple, probably 100 to 150 bucks. And obviously goes up from there depending on your taste. And what you're looking for. But restaurants have seemed to go up in value or up in cost, as during the pandemic and everything costs more. So they were raising those prices. The grocery prices did come down a little bit, but those prices haven't changed in the menu. Not sure if they haven't got the memo or this is just the new norm. But definitely the cost of eating out is going up, whether you're, enjoying a couple cocktails or not. And you could spend $400 or $500 on a super nice 5-star meal for 2 if you wanted to, and that's what your taste buds wanted. Next, let's talk about entertainment. There was a great article recently written by the Denver Post asking if they thought Lyft tickets were going to go up to $300 per day. Full disclosure, I'm not a skier, so a lot of this information I'm taking from that article. They didn't seem to think that tickets, even at Vail and some of the higher end places, were going to go over $300 a day anytime soon. They did mention that on high traffic days, when they're trying to limit the amount of people on the slopes, the ticket prices are higher. Imagine that, supply and demand running that show. You definitely can find it said throughout, if you're getting like 6-day passes and you're paying in advance, obviously those can average out a little bit below $100, $150 if you're doing that and taking that chance. Obviously the season pass is the way to go if you're local and you're hitting the slopes as often as possible. They have 6, 10, all the mountain passes. I don't know what they got. Epic passes. I don't know. I just hear the articles and the ads on the radio. But the cost of skiing is definitely more expensive. Obviously, COVID and things like that. I would say you're pretty lucky to get on the slopes for under $150. And that's before we factor in lessons, renting gear, the travel to get there, the food while you're there, the drinks while you're there, all of that. So definitely not the cheapest of hobbies. I think the hobby sports really took off in the pandemic when, they were still open, but they were limiting the amount of people and, had waiting lists and that kind of stuff. People really started to pick that stuff up and realize, that maybe they should get back to some of that stuff they enjoy. Golf, I know, $80 to $90 for a round of golf, and that's only if you can get on the course. The golf is still, to this day, 2 weeks out, they open those tee times and they're gone pretty quickly. So that's around me in Southwest Denver, metro area. So, and then obviously we have the concerts. I do enjoy concerts. I live about 10 minutes from Red Rocks. You're not getting into Red Rocks for, a mid-level act for under $60, $80. This day and age. Obviously, if you're waiting on the secondary market, probably not anything under $100. Depending on who it is and the weather and all that stuff, you could get a last minute deal. Season ticket holder of the Broncos, $125 a ticket for season ticket holders. You're not getting a ticket for under $200 in that stadium, even though the Broncos aren't so hot on the secondary market. If the weather's nice and you got a team that can breathe at coming into town. So that's another thing. We do love our sports. I will tell you, probably the cheapest ticket in town is the Rockies. There's a ton of options in general, standing room only and that kind of stuff, and they're terrible. We do have a huge stadium, huge ballpark, 50,000, a little bit under 45,000 now after they renovated, that can seat in there. So those ticket prices are a little bit low, but still you're talking, $15, $20 a ticket, unless you're in the worst spot in the house that you probably can't even see the game from, which maybe you don't care. And then next, we're going to kind of go into the miscellaneous cost of things. Average gym membership, $20 to $50 a month. You can go all the way up to $250 with Lifetime Fitness. And you have, your strip mall kind of gyms that are just weight benches and things for, they'll run the specials for $9.99 a month for a certain amount of time and that kind of stuff. A cup of coffee at Starbucks, $6. As I mentioned, gas about $4.50 right now. So it kind of trickles down. The cost of all things trickles down. Now, the one thing in Denver that you cannot, replace and that you can get for absolutely free is the beauty of the nature. Pop a spot, watch the beautiful sunset over the Rockies. That's absolutely free. But as for the general cost of living, it is definitely not the cheapest place to live. If you have any questions, if I mentioned something that you didn't hear, and definitely, drop it in the comments below. I would love to reach out. If you have any questions and you're considering moving here, I'm your guy. Call me up. We can make a budget. We can make that happen because it is an actually amazing place to live. Just may take getting a little creative with some of the budget and financing to get you here. So Jeremy Kane, eXp Realty, please like, comment, subscribe. We'll catch you on the next one.